My daughter dropped her 5-year-old at my front door and never came back. That was 11 years ago. In those 11 years, my granddaughter Chloe went from a terrified little girl who flinched at every slammed car door to a 16-year-old whose software can listen to a human voice and tell you with terrifying accuracy whether the words match the feelings. A few months ago, she sold that system VoiceTell to a medical security startup in New York for $3.4 million. They put her on TV for it. Anxious teen creates groundbreaking voice truth AI, the headline said. 2 weeks after the segment aired, my doorbell rang. When I opened the door, my daughter Melissa was standing on my porch in a tailored blazer, makeup perfect, hair in soft curls. Beside her was a man in a dark suit holding a leather briefcase. "Hi, Mom," she said, like the last 11 years hadn't happened. My stomach dropped so fast I had to hold the doorframe.
Underestimated me
"Ethan,"
because of my age.
I almost said, because I'd watched that other story so many times.
They won't
But this
make
is
that
my
mistake
story,
again.
and my girl's name is Chloe. "Chloe," Melissa said, peering past me into the house. Her voice had that soft tremor people use when they want to sound fragile. "Is she here?" The man stepped forward, all polished politeness. "Mrs. Harris? My name is Daniel Clark. I represent Miss Melissa Harris. We'd like to talk to you about Chloe's custody and financial guardianship." Custody, guardianship. The words hit me harder than the February wind. "What?" I managed. Melissa's eyes went shiny at the edges. "Mom, I know you've done so much for her," she said. "But Chloe's 16. She's got this big settlement now. She needs her mother. She needs guidance." Daniel snapped open the briefcase and laid a neat stack of folders and a small black flash drive in his palm. "My client has extensive documentation of her ongoing involvement and financial support," he said smoothly. "Bank statements, email printouts, voicemail recordings. She's petitioning the court for joint legal custody and financial control of Chloe's assets until she reaches the age of majority." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Joint custody, control of the money. $3.4 million. Chloe's future, her independence, her safety. All the years I'd spent fighting schools and therapists and insurance companies so she could just learn in peace. And here was Melissa, back from the dead, holding a lawyer and a flash drive full of proof she hadn't abandoned her child. "Those aren't real," I said, but my voice sounded thin even to me. "You left. You never called. Can we come in?" Melissa asked, that tremor back in her throat. "Please, Mom, it's important." I should have said no. I should have shut the door. Instead, I stepped aside like someone had reached inside my body and moved my legs for me. They came into my kitchen, the same kitchen where Chloe had spent years sitting at the table with headphones on, turning the world into waveforms, and sat at the oak table I'd bought secondhand in 1989. Daniel spread out the folders. I recognized the format immediately. Bank statements, money orders, printed emails with timestamps, lists of visits and calls. He set the flash drive on top, like a cherry on a poisonous sundae. "On here," he said, tapping the drive, "are recordings of Miss Harris's voicemails and phone calls with Chloe over the years. They paint a very clear picture of a mother who never stopped trying." Something in me snapped. "You dropped her on my porch and vanished," I said. My hands were shaking. "You sent one voicemail and blocked my number. One. I still have it." Melissa's eyes filled. She swallowed like she was forcing down a sob. "Mom, that's not the whole story. I sent money. I called. I tried to visit. You made it impossible." That was when I heard the soft pad of socks on hardwood behind me. Chloe had come out of her room. She stood in the doorway, shoulders slightly hunched, hands in the sleeves of her sweatshirt. Her hair was in a messy bun, and her favorite noise-canceling headphones hung around her neck like a necklace she hadn't decided whether to wear. She looked at Melissa like she was looking at a stranger on a bus. No anger, no tears, just observation. "Sweetheart," I said, because that's what I always called her when the world started spinning. "It's okay. Go back to your room." She didn't move. Her eyes flicked from Melissa to the stack of papers to the flash drive. Then she looked at me. "Grandma," she said quietly, "you should get a lawyer. My name is Helen Harris. I'm 64 years old, and I live in a 2-bedroom bungalow on the west side of Cleveland, Ohio. If you're listening to this on the Never Too Old channel, hi. I used to be a high school librarian. I believed my life would be shelving books, shushing teenagers, and retiring quietly. Turns out, my most exhausting, terrifying, and strangely beautiful chapters came after I turned 53. That's when my daughter left her child with me and walked away. Back then, November 2010, it was just another gray Friday in Cleveland. The kind where the sky looks like wet cardboard and the wind coming off Lake Erie cuts through your coat. I'd just gotten home from the grocery store, juggling bags of canned soup and cereal, when I saw Melissa's old Honda turn into my driveway. She never just dropped by, not even when things were good. I put the bag down on the porch. Melissa climbed out, wearing scrubs and a thin jacket. Her hair was pulled back, and there was a wild, over-caffeinated look in her eyes I recognized from my years watching kids cram for finals. Chloe climbed out of the back seat, 5 years old in a pink puffer coat, hugging a stuffed dog so tight its fur was flattened. "Hey," I said, forcing cheer into my voice. "This is a surprise." "Mom, I need you to keep her for the weekend," Melissa blurted, words tumbling over each other. "Just a couple of nights. They put me on night shift at the hospital again, and my sitter bailed, and..." She was talking fast, too fast. I could hear the strain in her voice, like a guitar string tuned just a half step too high. "Okay, slow down," I said. "Come inside, we'll figure it out." "I can't." She opened the back door, unbuckled Chloe. "I'm already late. I'll call you Sunday and pick her up before dinner. Okay?" Chloe didn't move at first. She stayed in the car seat, fingers jammed in her ears, eyes locked on some invisible point on the floor. "Hey, honey," I said, leaning in. "It's Grandma." She finally looked up, not at my face, at my mouth. Her whole body was rocking, just a little, back and forth. "Chloe, sweetheart, you're gonna have a sleepover with Grandma," Melissa said, her voice jumping between too bright and too flat. "It'll be fun, right?" Chloe flinched at the sudden brightness. That was my first clue. "I'll call you Sunday," Melissa repeated, already backing down the walkway. "Thank you, Mom. I mean it." "Melissa, wait, what does she eat? Her bedtime? Does she..." "I gotta go," she called over her shoulder. "Love you." No hug, no kiss for her daughter. Just the door slamming, the engine revving, her taillights disappearing down the street. Chloe stood on my porch, clutching the stuffed dog, eyes back on the concrete. The city bus squealed to a stop at the corner. Chloe jerked like she'd been hit, slammed her hands over her ears, and squeezed her eyes shut. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay, sweetheart, it's just the bus. It's always loud." She didn't answer. She just kept rocking. I had been a school librarian for 30 years. I'd worked with plenty of kids who had diagnoses: ADHD, autism, anxiety, but always from a distance, through the lens of progress reports and IEPs and whispered hallway gossip. There was always a special ed teacher, a counselor, a team. Now it was just me and a 5-year-old who reacted to the hum of my refrigerator like it was a fire alarm. "Come on in," I said softly. I picked up the grocery bag with one hand and nudged the door open with my hip. Chloe didn't move. I held the door and waited. After about a minute of wind and squealing brakes and distant dogs barking, she took 3 quick steps, darted past me into the house, and headed straight for the living room. By the time I shut the door, she was in the corner, curled up on the end of the sofa with her knees pulled to her chest, hands still clamped over her ears. The furnace kicked on with a hollow thump. She jumped again. I turned the thermostat down until it shut off. "Are you hungry?" I asked. Her lips moved. No sound came out. I tried again. "Thirsty?" Nothing. I went into the kitchen, digging under the sink until I found the old plastic cup I kept for when Chloe came by twice a year. Yellow, with a faded picture of a giraffe on it. I filled it with water and set it on the coffee table a few feet from her. She stared at it for a long time, rocking. Finally, she stretched one foot out and nudged the cup a few inches closer with her toe. "Okay," I whispered, feeling like I just watched a wild animal step out of the woods. "We can work with that." That first night was a disaster. I called Melissa 3 times in the space of an hour, straight to voicemail. "Lissy, it's Mom. Call me back as soon as you get this. I need to know what Chloe eats. She won't touch anything. I need something." No response. I tried mac and cheese. She gagged. "Chicken nuggets." She turned her head away and started to shake. "Plain toast." She stared at it like it was a test she hadn't studied for. She ate 3 Ritz crackers and half a banana. That was it. At bedtime, I showed her the small guest room I'd set up, with a twin bed and a comforter covered in cartoon owls. She froze in the doorway. "We can leave the light on," I said. "Or off. Or just the lamp. Whatever you want, sweetheart." I took a step toward her with the blanket. Her scream was so high and sharp I felt it in my teeth. "Okay," I said quickly, backing away. "No blanket." "Got it." That night, she didn't sleep in the bed. She lay curled up at the far end of the couch, facing the wall, one hand still over one ear, the other clutching her stuffed dog. Every time a car door slammed on the street, she flinched. Every time the fridge clicked on, she whimpered. Around 2 a.m, I dug an old box fan out of the basement, set it on low, and pointed it away from her. The steady whoosh smoothed out the edges of the other sounds, she uncurling a little, shoulders dropping. I sat in the recliner and watched her breathe until the sky outside started to turn the color of cold milk. Saturday morning, I called Melissa again. Voicemail. "Lissy, it's Mom. I'm making an appointment with a pediatrician. I don't know what I'm doing here. Call me." By Sunday night, my call log was just her name over and over and over. By Tuesday, even the neighbors had stopped asking whose car that was in the driveway and just started waving at Chloe when they saw her through the window. A week later, sitting in an exam room with cartoon giraffes on the walls, a pediatric psychologist flipped through her notes and said, "Mrs. Harris, your granddaughter is extremely sound sensitive. She has an anxiety disorder and a very atypical auditory processing profile. She hears things other people don't notice at all." "Like what?" I asked. "The smallest changes in tone, pacing, micro pauses." The doctor, Dr. Patel, looked up at me. To her, a conversation is like standing under 10 different radios at once. It's exhausting. That's why she shuts down. "What do we do?" "You create an environment where sound is predictable," Dr. Patel said. "No TV on in the background just to fill silence. No yelling, stable routines, soft voices, white noise at night. And you adjust your expectations." She held my gaze. "You are her primary caregiver now, Mrs. Harris. Melissa brought her here. She's not answering. We have to assume this is Chloe's home." Primary caregiver. I'd been plenty of things in my life. Wife, librarian, mother. I hadn't expected to be primary caregiver again at 53. I nodded. Because what else could I do? 2 weeks after Chloe arrived, I was in a Goodwill store, digging through a bin of electronics, when I found a small, battered digital voice recorder. $5. The play button was half worn off. Something about it made me pick it up. Maybe, I thought, if Chloe could hear my voice the same way every time, it would help. That night, I sat at the kitchen table and recorded myself saying the same phrases over and over. "Good morning, sweetheart. Time for breakfast. You're safe. I'm not going anywhere." 22. The next day, I left the recorder on the coffee table next to her yellow giraffe cup. Chloe stared at it like it might bite. Then, slowly, she picked it up, turned it over, and pressed play. "Good morning, sweetheart," my own voice said from 6 inches away. Chloe flinched, then replayed it. Again. And again. That little recorder became the third person in our house. She carried it everywhere, recording everything. The radio, my voice, the birds in the maple tree outside the window, the neighbor's lawnmower, the creak of the back steps. At night, when she couldn't sleep, she lay on the couch with headphones on, scrolling through files. Sometimes, walking past, I'd hear her whispering. Different, same, lying, scared, like she was putting the sounds into little invisible boxes. December came fast. The lake effect snow started in earnest, burying Cleveland in that heavy, wet slush that never looks as magical as the postcards. Chloe tolerated the routine I'd built. Breakfast at 7, walk around the block at 9, story time at 10, lunch at noon, quiet time with the fan on in the afternoon. No TV unless she chose a show, and the volume never went past 10. I left voicemails for Melissa every few days. "Lissy, it's Mom. She needs winter boots." "Lissy, they want to start therapy twice a week. Insurance is a nightmare. I need your signature. Lissy, please. She asked about you." Always voicemail, never a human voice. On Christmas Eve, I was in the kitchen making sugar cookies, because that's what you do, even when you're too tired to care about Christmas. The radio was off. The fan hummed softly in the living room, masking the sound of cars sliding through slush outside. Chloe sat at the table, peeling the labels off a stack of soup cans like it was her job. The landline rang. My heart jumped. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and grabbed the receiver. "Hello? Mom," Melissa's voice. Raw, hoarse, like she hadn't slept in a week. "Lissy," I breathed. "Thank God. Where are you? When are you coming to get her? She needs you." I can't do this," she said. Her words landed like ice cubes dropped down the back of my shirt. "What?" "I can't do this anymore, Mom." There was noise in the background. Traffic, someone shouting, a door slamming. I'm not cut out for it. The screaming, the appointments, I can't. You're her mother." "I know." Her voice cracked. "She's yours." The line went dead. I stared at the receiver. Dial tone. I called back. Straight to voicemail. I tried her cell. "This number is no longer in service." I stood there with the phone in my hand while the cookies burned. Smoke started to curl out of the oven door. The fire alarm chirped once. Chloe jolted up from her chair, hands clamped over her ears, eyes wide with terror. I lunged for the oven, yanked the blackened cookies out, and flung open a window to air out the kitchen. The alarm stopped. The fan hummed. My legs gave out. I sat down on the tile, back against the cabinet, phone still in my hand. I must have been sitting there a while, because the tile chilled through my jeans. At some point, Chloe appeared in the doorway, socked feet silent on the floor. She watched me for a long time. Then she went to the fridge, pulled the yellow giraffe cup from the shelf, filled it carefully at the sink, and set it down on the floor next to me. She didn't say anything. She just put the cup there, like an anchor, and went back to the living room. That was the moment I understood. Whatever Melissa had just done, Chloe and I were in this together now, whether we were ready or not. The years after that bled into each other the way Cleveland winters do. Gray, slow, punctuated by a few sharp storms. I built a life around sound. The TV stayed off unless Chloe asked for it. No news humming in the background while I cooked, no sitcom laugh tracks filling the silence. I talked slower, softer, never raising my voice even when I wanted to. Breakfast at 7, walk at 9, library on Tuesdays, therapy on Thursdays, grocery store at the same time every week, so the sounds were at least predictable. We learned little tricks. White noise apps, soft closing cabinet pads, a rug under the spinning office chair so it didn't screech on the hardwood. Chloe learned to trust the routine. She sat at the kitchen table while I made coffee, recorder on the table, listening to my voice on loop. "Good morning, sweetheart. You're safe. I'm not going anywhere." When she was 6, I started finding sticky notes on the fridge. Not words at first, just little hand-drawn symbols. A squiggly line, a zigzag, a series of dots. She'd press the play button on the recorder, listen to a snippet of radio or a voicemail, pause it, and then draw. "Is that a code?" I asked once. She shrugged without looking at me. At one of our sessions, I mentioned it to Dr. Patel. "She's tracking her world," Dr. Patel said. "Categorizing. It helps her feel safer. Let her do it." So I stopped trying to decode the symbols and just bought more sticky notes. By 7, the symbols turned into letters. She'd fill index cards with neat block writing. Calm, too loud, fake nice, mad, hurt. At 8, the questions came. We were parked in the Walmart lot one March afternoon, waiting for the ice to melt off the windshield. The heater hummed low. The radio was off. Chloe was in the passenger seat, her recorder in her lap. Without looking at me, she said, "Grandma, why did Mom lie before she left?" I knew exactly what she meant. Melissa had left a series of voicemails in that first month. "Hey baby, Mommy's gonna come get you before you fall asleep, okay? I promise I'll be there for your appointment. I'll take you to the zoo next weekend, I swear." Promises that turned into static. I gripped the steering wheel and stared at the ice crystals cracking on the glass. Because she was scared, I wanted to say. Because panic makes people say anything to get out of the moment. Because some people run from the fire instead of toward it. She was scared, I said finally. And she didn't know how to stay. Chloe didn't cry. She just nodded once, slow, and turned on the recorder. Because she was scared, and she didn't know how to stay, she repeated softly, mimicking my cadence exactly. At home that night, when she thought I wasn't listening, I heard the recorder announce in its tinny little voice, "New file saved. Truth Grandma ate yo." That's what she named it. Truth. Chloe started public school in earnest that fall. Academically, she was fine. More than fine. She devoured books. She could add and subtract in her head faster than I could punch numbers into a calculator. She loved patterns, spelling rules, multiplication tables, the Dewey Decimal System. Socially, she was a mess. Recess was a nightmare of shrieking kids and whistles and metal chains clanking on swing sets. The cafeteria was worse. She spent most lunch periods in the library, hands over her ears, lips moving silently as she repeated snippets of overheard conversations to herself under her breath. After 3 months, the principal called. "Miss Harris, we need to talk about Chloe's placement," he said. Principal Evans. Nice tie, nice smile. That tone of voice I recognized from 1,000 parent meetings. Polite concern with an undercurrent of, "This is a problem." "I'm happy to meet," I said. "When?" We ended up in a conference room with cinderblock walls and buzzing fluorescent lights. Evans at the head of the table, the school psychologist beside him, Chloe's teacher clutching a folder with my granddaughter's name on the tab. I'd been a school librarian for 30 years. I knew this dance. "Chloe is very bright," the teacher started. "Her reading is above grade level, but she struggles with group activities, recess, assemblies, music class. She spends a lot of time withdrawn, wearing headphones. I do not frown. She has documented sensory sensitivities," I said. "It's in the file." "Yes, of course," Evans said smoothly. "We're just concerned that the general education environment may not be the least restrictive environment for her." He used the phrase like it hurt his mouth. I smiled, baring my teeth. "That's interesting," I said. "Because under IDEA and Section 504, least restrictive environment means she should be in general ed with appropriate supports unless you can prove otherwise. You can't just shove her into a special behavior room because she makes adults uncomfortable." Miss Carter, the psychologist, shifted in her seat. "We're not talking about shoving, Mrs. Harris. We're talking about what's best for Chloe. A smaller classroom, fewer sensory triggers, with kids whose academics are nowhere near her level," I said. "So you can call it for her own good while you bury her." "Miss Harris," Evans said, adopting his patient principal voice, "we are on the same team here." My voice shook, but I kept it low. "No," I said. "We are not. I am here to make sure my granddaughter gets what the law says she's entitled to. You're here to manage resources." There was a small noise from the corner. Chloe was sitting on a chair in the back, knees tucked up, headphones around her neck, voice recorder in her hands. I'd asked if she could sit in because I didn't want decisions made about her in rooms she would never see. She had been listening to every word. On the drive home, she stared out the window, watching the snowbanks blur past. "You sounded scared when the principal said 'for her own good,'" she said suddenly. I glanced at her. "Did I?" "Your voice went up," she said. "On good." I felt my eyes sting. "I was scared," I admitted. Adults use that phrase when they're about to take something away. She nodded, like she was filing that under patterns. As she got older, the voice recorder became less of a toy and more of an archive. She saved everything. Robocalls about expiring car warranties, messages from the pharmacy, the automated menu lady from our insurance company. She'd sit at my old laptop for hours, breaking the recordings into individual sentences, labeling them. On the screen, I'd see rows like, "Is greater than, your payment is past due. Angry but pretending polite. Is greater than, we're just calling to check in. Hiding something. Is greater than, I'm not mad, I promise. Lying. I worried, of course." "This isn't unhealthy?" I asked Dr. Patel one afternoon, while Chloe sat in the waiting room with her headphones. Dr. Patel steepled her fingers. "Is she sleeping?" she asked. "Mostly. Eating? Better than when she came. Still picky, but stable. Making some progress at school? Yes." "Then I'd call it a special interest," Dr. Patel said. "Autistic and anxious kids often have them. Some kids memorize dinosaur facts." Chloe catalogs voices. "Voices," I repeated. "She's trying to understand a world that hasn't made sense," Dr. Patel said. "If her interest ever starts to hurt her functioning, if she stops sleeping, stops eating, refuses to leave the house, then we intervene. Until then, we observe. So I observed. At 12, Chloe started borrowing Python books from the library where I worked. I'd find her sprawled on the living room floor, laptop open, recorder beside her, muttering things like Mel spectrogram and MFCC coefficients into the machine so she could remember how they sounded. One day, I walked past her room and saw her screen filled with colorful bands and lines, visual representations of sound. "What are you doing?" I asked, leaning against the doorframe. "Looking at voices," she said, eyes still on the screen. "That looks like art." She shook her head. "Data." On the screen, she clicked between two waveforms. "This is someone saying, 'I'm fine' when they are okay," she said. "This is someone saying, 'I'm fine' when they're not. See how the pitch and the tremor and the breathing are different?" I squinted. I saw squiggles. She saw patterns. By 13, she'd written the first version of the thing that would change our lives. "I'm calling it VoiceTell," she announced one afternoon, sliding into the kitchen chair opposite me, laptop under her arm. "Like Truthor?" I asked. "Like showing what the voice is telling you even when the words lie," she said simply. She pulled up a small window with a box that said Upload File and a button that said Analyze. She dropped in a snippet of a voicemail from my bank, the screen filled with graphs and numbers and labels. "See?" she said. "It's reading pitch, volume, jitter, shimmer, pauses, breath. It compares them to hundreds of files I've already labeled." She tapped a line of text. It says, "High likelihood of rehearsed script, low emotional involvement." "It's a bank," I said. "I certainly hope they're not emotionally involved with my checking account." She rolled her eyes in a very teenage way. Then she loaded a clip from one of those true crime podcasts she loved, the ones where the host plays interrogation tapes. The screen lit up. "Suspect says, 'I would never hurt her.' VoiceTell says," she pointed to the output, "high mismatch between content and vocal stress, incongruent affect, medium probability of concealment." "So you built a lie detector," I said slowly. She shook her head. "Not a lie detector. A mismatch detector." She picked at the edge of the table. "Sometimes people tell the truth but are scared. Sometimes they lie but want it to be true. It doesn't say good or bad, just matched or not." I stared at her. "You did this by yourself." "You helped," she said. I laughed. "How?" "You paid the internet bill," she said deadpan. At 16, Chloe presented VoiceTell at an online youth research conference. The session was live-streamed from our living room. She wore a black sweater and jeans and sat stiffly in front of my old desktop, her hair pulled back to keep it from brushing the mic. "Hi," she said to the camera. "My name is Chloe Harris. I built a model that analyzes microfeatures in speech, pitch, rhythm, tremor, breath patterns to infer emotional state and congruence between words and affect." The chat window lit up with "wow" emojis. After the conference, an email popped up from a startup in New York that specialized in voice security for hospitals. They wanted to make sure that when patients said yes or no to procedures over telehealth, those answers were freely given, not coerced in the background by an abusive partner or a pushy relative. They set up a Zoom call. A whole panel of grown adults in button-downs and hoodies appeared on the screen. Their offices looked like every tech brochure you've ever seen. Glass walls, succulents, whiteboards full of scribbles. "Chloe, can you walk us through your training data?" one of them asked. She did. She talked about feature extraction and labeling bias and avoiding overfitting. She talked about how she'd built in a humility flag so that when the system wasn't confident enough, it said, "I don't know," instead of making up an answer. At the end of the call, their CEO said, "We'd like to discuss acquiring VoiceTell." I nearly dropped the mug I was holding. "Acquiring?" I said after we logged off, sitting down hard at the table. "Like, buying?" Chloe nodded. "That's what it sounded like. We hired a lawyer." Miss Reynolds was a compact woman in her 40s, with steel gray hair and a voice that could cut glass when she wanted it to. $3.4 million, she said the day the final offer came in. Full acquisition. They own the software and the IP. In exchange, you get a lot of money and a 5-year non-compete in voice-based emotional analysis. Chloe stared at the number on the page, then at the clause. "I can't do anything like VoiceTell commercially for 5 years?" she asked. Not in this exact domain, Miss Reynolds said. You can still write other software. You just can't build a competing product. That's fine, Chloe said. I looked at her. You spent years on this, I said. Are you sure you want to just walk away? I'm not walking away, she said. I'm selling it. She signed. They wired the money into a trust account with Miss Reynolds listed as co-trustee until Chloe turned 18. I expected Chloe to celebrate. To want to go out to dinner, at least. To splurge on something. Instead, she sat on the couch that night, recorder on the table, staring at the blank TV screen. You okay? I asked, sliding onto the other end of the sofa. Yeah, she said. Her voice sounded wrong. Sweetheart, I said gently. You did something huge. You're allowed to feel something about it. I just keep thinking, she said slowly, that now people are listening, and that means other people might too. Other people? She didn't answer. 2 weeks later, the local NBC station called. We heard about Chloe's sale, the producer said. We'd love to feature her for a human interest piece. Local girl, anxiety, tech, millions. It's a great story. Everything in me wanted to say no. The last thing we needed was cameras in the house, strangers touching our walls, lights and booms, and equipment buzzing. Chloe said yes. It's one interview, she told me. I can handle it. The reporter, a young woman named Kate, came with a small crew on a Thursday afternoon. They set up in the living room lights, camera, the works. Chloe sat in her favorite corner of the couch, hands folded. Can you tell us, in simple terms, what VoiceTell does? Kate asked, smiling. It analyzes how people say things, Chloe said. Not just what they say. It looks for patterns in their voice that don't match the words. And why did you build it? Chloe looked at the camera like it was a person who deserved the truth. Because people lie, she said. Sometimes on purpose, sometimes because they're scared. Voices know before words do. Kate blinked, a little thrown, then smiled brighter. That's very profound, she said. What do you plan to do with the money? Keep living, Chloe said. Maybe go to college. Buy noise-canceling headphones that don't break every 6 months. The crew laughed. The segment aired on a Friday night. They showed old photos of Chloe at the library, B-roll of Cleveland's skyline, clips of her screen with colorful waveforms dancing. After the piece, my phone buzzed with texts from colleagues, cousins, neighbors. Just saw Chloe on TV. Wow, Helen, she's amazing. 3.4 million. Drinks on you. I looked at Chloe. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't frowning. She was listening. Her eyes were on the TV, where the anchor was already moving on to the next story, but I could tell she was hearing something else entirely. What are you listening to? I asked. She shrugged. Echoes. 2 weeks after the segment aired, the doorbell rang. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late March. Slush still lined the street, and the mail carrier had just left a pile of catalogs on the porch. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and opened the door, and there she was. Melissa, in a slate gray suit and black heels, makeup soft and expensive. Her hair, which she used to dye jet black, was now a tasteful chestnut with subtle highlights. Behind her, Daniel Clark held his briefcase like a shield. Hi, Mom, she said. I had imagined this moment 100 times over the years. In most of those versions, she was crying and apologizing and falling to her knees. In none of them was she wearing a blazer that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Melissa, I said. Chloe, she said, craning her neck to look past me. Is she home? I gripped the doorframe. What are you doing here? We just want to talk, Daniel said smoothly. Miss Harris has always intended to reconnect. Given recent events, I repeated. It seems like an appropriate time to formalize arrangements, he finished. Arrangements. Grandma? Chloe's voice floated from the hallway behind me. She walked up slowly, stopping a few feet from the door. She looked at Melissa's shoes, her suit, her face. Hey, baby, Melissa said, her voice going soft in a way that made my skin crawl. Oh my God, look at you. You're so big. Chloe's hands slid into the sleeves of her sweatshirt. Her shoulders rose. Hi, she said eventually. No expression. Daniel cleared his throat. Perhaps we could sit down? We ended up at the kitchen table again. Daniel laid out the paper trail. Photocopied money orders made out to my address, email printouts supposedly sent to an account I hadn't used in years, a color-coded log of visits Melissa claimed to have made over the past 11 years. We've also compiled an audio record, he said, sliding the flash drive toward me. Voicemails, phone calls. You never called, I said. He smiled, the way lawyers do when they think they're winning. We have timestamps that say otherwise. He plugged the drive into his laptop, pulled up an audio file, and clicked play. Hi, baby, it's Mom, Melissa's voice said through the tinny speakers, softer, younger. I'm sorry I couldn't make it to your recital. I love you so much. I'm trying, okay? The words hit me like a punch to the chest, because I remembered that recital. Chloe's class had stood on the cafeteria stage in paper crowns, warbling a patriotic song about the Midwest. There had been no empty seat next to me that night, because I'd known better than to save one. There had been no voicemail like this. Chloe's eyes were on the laptop. Her face didn't change, but I saw the micro-tension in her jaw. That's fabricated, I said. Daniel shook his head. You're welcome to get an expert to analyze it, but it will come back clean. These recordings are admissible. They demonstrate my client's emotional investment and ongoing contact attempts. Emotional investment, I repeated bitterly. Mom, I never stopped loving her, Melissa said. Her voice caught perfectly on loving, like she'd practiced it. You kept her from me. I kept her alive, I snapped. Chloe flinched at the volume. I forced myself to breathe. You abandoned her, I said, quieter. You sent one voicemail and disappeared. I have it. I saved it. No, Melissa said, shaking her head. I was struggling. I sent money. I called. You never answered. You shut me out. I have the receipts. She had something. That much was clear. So what do you want? I asked, even though I already knew. To be her mother, Melissa said. And, Daniel added, to be properly recognized as such in the eyes of the court. Joint legal custody, financial guardianship of Chloe's assets until she turns 18, given her minor status and her unique vulnerabilities. 2. You want control of her money, I said. Control is a harsh word, he said smoothly. Guidance. Chloe stood up. Grandma, she said. I looked at her. Her eyes were very, very calm. You should call Miss Reynolds, she said. Miss Reynolds came to the house 3 days later. I couldn't face downtown, not with my hands shaking so bad I could barely hold my keys. She sat at my kitchen table, the same spot Melissa had taken days earlier, and laid out her legal pad and pen. Okay, she said. Tell me everything. I told her about Melissa dropping Chloe off, about the pediatrician and Dr. Patel, about the Christmas Eve call and the words, she's yours. I told her about the years in between, school meetings, therapy, IEPs, panic attacks, routines. I slid across a stack of binders, school reports, medical records, therapy notes, phone bills, bank statements. These are good, she said, flipping through them. You're thorough. I was a librarian, I said. We hoard paper. She smiled briefly. Then she opened Daniel's folder. She listened to 3 of the voicemails on the flash drive. On the first one, Melissa apologized for missing a birthday party. On the second, she begged for a chance to visit. On the third, she cried as she said, I love you, baby. I'm trying so hard. They sounded real. If the court believes these, Miss, Reynolds said, pausing the audio, they will be very sympathetic to her. They're fake, I said. They have to be. I believe you, she said, but belief isn't evidence. And on paper, Melissa never lost her parental rights. You never went to court, never got formal guardianship. Legally, you're a de facto caregiver. She's still the parent. Because I thought, I said, my voice breaking, if I poured everything into Chloe, if I was the one at every appointment, that would matter more than paperwork. It matters morally, Miss Reynolds said gently. In family court, it's not enough. My chest felt like someone was sitting on it. Can she take Chloe away? I whispered. Physical custody? Miss Reynolds shook her head. Chloe's 16. Judges don't drag teenagers out of stable homes unless there's abuse. But financial guardianship? She exhaled. That's a different story. If the judge believes Melissa provided steady support all along and that you blocked contact, the court could give her control over the trust until Chloe turns 18. 2 years. 2 years of Melissa holding the reins. What do we do? I asked. We fight, she said. We subpoena phone records. We trace the supposed money orders. We examine metadata on the audio. We depose Melissa under oath. And if that's not enough? Miss Reynolds hesitated, then squeezed my hand. Then we hope the judge listens, she said. And we prepare Chloe just in case. The depositions were held in a glass-walled conference room downtown, on the 12th floor of a building that smelled like lemon cleaner and old coffee. Melissa went first. She wore a soft pink sweater this time, minimal makeup, the kind of outfit people wear when they want to look trustworthy and tired. Daniel sat beside her, asking questions in a gentle voice. Miss Harris, can you describe your involvement in Chloe's life over the past 11 years? I tried to be there, Melissa said, eyes shiny. I sent money whenever I could. I called, I left voicemails, I drove over here, and my mother refused to let me see her. Do you have records of those attempts? Yes, she gestured to the stack of printouts. I kept track. How often did you send money? At least once every 3 months, she said without hesitation. More when I could. I worked 2, sometimes 3 jobs. But I always put something aside for Chloe. She listed dates. March 2012, $200. October 2013, $300. April 2015, $500. All lies, all polished. Miss Reynolds cross-examined, but Melissa stayed on script. Her voice trembled at practiced moments. She dabbed at her eyes. I wasn't allowed to shout, liar. So I sat there and dug my nails into my palms until they hurt. 3 days later, it was Chloe's turn. She wore a navy hoodie and jeans and carried her recorder in her pocket, like armor. Daniel smiled at her, like she was a skittish animal. Hi, Chloe. How are you today? Anxious, she said. His smile twitched. Do you remember your mother visiting you over the years? Chloe stared at the middle of the table. I remember her dropping me off at Grandma's, she said. I remember a phone call where she said, she's yours. I don't remember visits. Do you remember her calling you? Leaving you messages? I'd have to check my records, Chloe said. Daniel blinked. Your records? Oh, my logs, she said. He laughed softly. Let's just focus on your memory for now, okay? She shrugged. Miss Reynolds asked her about me. Who takes care of you? She said. Grandma, Chloe answered. Who goes to appointments with you? Grandma. Where have you lived since you were 5? With Grandma. Do you want to keep living with her? Yes. Do you want your mother to be in charge of your money? No. Her answers were so simple, so small, compared to Melissa's sweeping narrative. I wanted more from her emotion. Tears. Something. But Chloe isn't built that way. Her face stayed neutral, her voice stayed steady. Afterward, in the elevator, Miss Reynolds said. She did fine. Fine doesn't beat fake bank statements and rehearsed voicemails, I muttered. We're not done, Miss Reynolds said. I'm still working on the phone records, but I'm going to be honest with you, Helen. Without a way to discredit that audio, we're in a tight spot. That night, I sat at the kitchen table and cried harder than I had in years. We're going to lose, I whispered when Chloe came in to refill her water. After everything, we're going to lose control of your life to someone who walked away. Chloe set the cup down and watched me. She didn't come closer. She almost never did. After a moment, she said, I have work to do. It stood. She went back to her room and shut the door. The soft click sounded final. Part of me wanted to go after her, to demand comfort, to say, I fought for you, fight for me. But I also knew better. She copes by doing, not by hugging. Around midnight, when the house was dark except for the sliver of light under her door, I got up to use the bathroom. Her keyboard was still clicking. I knocked gently and cracked the door. Her room was a cave of screens. Laptop, monitor, phone, all glowing with waveforms and code. She sat cross-legged in her desk chair, eyes flicking between windows. Chloe, I said, it's after midnight. You have court in the morning. I know, she said. You need sleep. So do you. I stepped closer, careful not to touch her chair. What are you doing? Training, she said. Tuning. Checking device fingerprints, background noise, spectral features. You're... What? I'm letting it hear her, she said. Old calls, new ones, comparing. Chloe, I don't... She stopped typing. For a moment, she just stared at the screen. Tomorrow, she said. You just tell the truth. That's your job. The truth hasn't been enough so far, I said, voice shaking. It will be, she said. How do you know? Because she's lying, Chloe said simply. And my whole life has been about hearing that. I went back to bed, but I didn't sleep. Her keyboard clacked until almost dawn. Cleveland's courthouse is an old stone building full of metal detectors, fluorescent lights, and echoey hallways. The kind of place where sound bounces and sticks. Chloe walked beside me through security, her headphones around her neck, her recorder in her hoodie pocket, her hands jammed deep into the sleeves. Miss Reynolds met us outside the family courtroom. Remember, she said, looking at me. Let me handle objections. Answer questions directly. Don't engage with Melissa. Don't react to the recordings. What about me? Chloe asked. Keep your answers short and honest, Miss Reynolds said. If the judge asks you anything, speak up, but don't volunteer more than you need to. This isn't your job to fix. Chloe's eyes flicked to my face. She knew better. Inside, Melissa sat at the petitioner's table with Daniel, wearing a soft blue dress this time and a delicate necklace I'd never seen before. It screamed, respectable. Judge Carlson was a woman in her 50s, with sharp eyes and a dark bob, no nonsense in the way she said, "Be seated." Daniel stood. Your Honor, we're here today to address custody and financial guardianship matters regarding Chloe Harris, he said. My client, Miss Melissa Harris, is Chloe's biological mother. She has maintained ongoing involvement and support over the past 11 years. Unfortunately, due to interpersonal conflict and misunderstandings, she has been prevented from fully participating. We are asking the court to recognize her role and grant her joint legal custody and financial guardianship over Chloe's recent substantial assets until Chloe reaches 18. He laid out the documents with a practiced hand. Bank statements showing money orders addressed to my street. Email printouts complaining about Mom not returning my calls. Visitation logs written in neat handwriting, listing dates and times and excuses for why she supposedly had to leave early. Then he played the audio. Voicemails with timestamps spaced neatly across the years. Hey baby, Mommy's trying. I'm working 3 jobs, but I'm saving something for you, I promise. Happy birthday, sweetheart. I wish I could be there. Grandma won't pick up, but I love you so much. I talked to a lawyer today. I'm going to make sure I see you. Don't ever think I stopped caring. In each one, her voice trembled at all the right moments. If I hadn't been the woman standing in the kitchen holding a dead phone on Christmas Eve, I might have believed her. Judge Carlson listened, face unreadable. When the audio ended, Daniel gestured to Melissa. Miss Harris, he said, can you describe your efforts to support Chloe? Melissa folded her hands. I was 23 when I had her, she said. I was overwhelmed. I made mistakes. Leaving her with my mom was one of them. Her eyes glistened. But I always meant it to be temporary. I called. I sent money. I tried to visit. Every time I showed up, Mom would make some excuse. Chloe's asleep. Chloe's at therapy. She shut me out. Why didn't you go to court sooner? Daniel asked. I didn't have money, she said. I didn't understand my rights. I thought as long as I kept in touch, it would be okay. But then I saw the news segment. I realized Chloe had this huge responsibility on her shoulders, and I wasn't there. I couldn't stay silent anymore. If I hadn't known her, I would have thought she was sincere. She could have won an award. Miss Reynolds stood. Your Honor, whatever Miss Harris claims, the facts are simple, she said. We have 11 years of records showing my client, Helen Harris, has been the sole caregiver. Every doctor's visit, every therapy appointment, every school meeting. Melissa Harris left Chloe on her porch at age 5 and did not return. She slid our binders onto the evidence table. Calendars, report cards, therapy notes. Judge Carlson flipped through them. These are thorough, she said. But I see no formal guardianship order. No termination of parental rights. No, Miss Reynolds admitted. My client did not think to go to court while she was busy keeping her granddaughter fed and regulated and alive. With respect, Counselor, Judge Carlson said, the law cares about documentation. She looked at me then. Mrs. Harris, I appreciate your dedication, she said. But without proof that Melissa Harris formally surrendered her rights, and in the presence of what appears to be significant evidence of ongoing involvement, I have to give her position weight. I felt the room tilt. Behind me, The cheap courtroom clock ticked too loud. Chloe sat very still, staring at the table. Miss Reynolds opened her mouth probably to argue about the phone records we still hadn't gotten back from the carriers, but Chloe stood up. "Your Honor," she said. Her voice cut clean through the murmur. Judge Carlson looked at her. "Miss Harris? May I show you something?" Chloe asked. "This is highly irregular," Daniel began. Chloe ignored him. "It's about the recordings," she said. Judge Carlson studied her for a long moment. "You're the creator of this VoiceTell system, correct?" she asked. "Yes," Chloe said. "The one that was just sold to a medical security firm?" "Yes." "Tenety. And you believe you have relevant evidence regarding these voicemails?" "Yes," she said. My heart slammed so hard I could feel it in my throat. "Proceed," the judge said. "But keep it concise." Chloe pulled her laptop from her backpack, hands steady. She walked to the front, plugged an HDMI cable into the court's projector like she'd done it 100 times before. The screen behind the judge flickered to life, showing the simple gray and blue interface of VoiceTell. "First," she said, "I want to talk about devices." She clicked on the first voicemail Melissa had submitted, the one supposedly from 2012. "These recordings claim to be between 2011 and 2020, she said. "But sound isn't just voice, it's hardware." She zoomed in on the background hiss. "This hum comes from a specific kind of noise cancellation compressor Apple started using in their voice memo app in 2017, she said. It did not exist in 2012. A small ripple went through the courtroom. Daniel stood. "Objection, Your Honor." "She's speculating." "Overruled," Judge Carlson said. "You can cross-examine later, Mr. Clark. Continue, Miss Harris." Chloe pulled up a split screen. On the left, one of Melissa's old voicemails. On the right, a genuine robocall we'd gotten last year. "This spectral signature," she said, pointing to a colorful band, "is identical to modern iPhones." Over. She brought up a different file. A voicemail I'd saved from Christmas Eve 2010. The one where Melissa said, "She's yours." "Now this," Chloe said, "is what her voice sounded like then. No enhanced compression, no studio clean noise floor, just traffic and yelling and a payphone." She hit play. "Mom, I can't do this anymore. She's yours." Hearing it in that room, surrounded by strangers, made my chest hurt all over again. Chloe didn't flinch. "Second," she said, "I want to talk about patterns." She loaded another one of Melissa's so-called messages. "This clip has 4 I love yous in it," she said. "They happen at different points in the conversation. But if you look here," she zoomed in on the waves, "the microtremor pattern is identical. That usually only happens when a sentence has been recorded once and then cut and pasted in multiple spots. It's possible she simply repeated herself in a similar tone," Daniel said weakly. Chloe nodded. "It's possible," she agreed. "That's why VoiceTell doesn't just look at one feature." She pulled up a heat map with blues and reds. "Here, it's measuring congruence between prosody and lexical content," she said. "What that means is, do the sounds match the words?" On the screen, the phrases, "I'm trying so hard," and "I love you so much," glowed bright red. "This is a pattern we see when someone is performing emotion rather than feeling it," she said. "It shows up in actors, telemarketers reading scripts, and in apologies crafted by PR teams. It doesn't prove she doesn't care. It does show these were rehearsed." She clicked to another file, a supposed conversation between Melissa and 8-year-old Chloe. In it, a child's voice giggled and said, "I miss you, Mommy." "Is that you, Miss Harris?" the judge asked. "No," Chloe said. "That is not how my voice sounded then. And even if it was, the formant patterns, those are the resonant frequencies in the vocal tract, are too perfect. There's no growth drift, no natural variation. That usually happens with synthetic voices trained on a limited sample." Synthetic, the word hung in the air. "So you're saying these recordings are fake?" Judge Carlson said. "I'm saying," Chloe said carefully, "they were made recently, probably in 1 or 2 sessions, using modern devices and, in at least one case, a generative model to imitate a child's voice." Daniel sputtered. "You can't possibly know that." "Yes, she can," Miss Reynolds cut in. "Her system was vetted by a team of PhDs and security engineers before they paid 7 figures for it." Chloe kept going. "Finally," she said, "there's silence." She brought up another window, a spreadsheet. "These are my grandmother's phone records from 2010 to now," she said. landline and cell. Every incoming call, every outgoing call. I cross-referenced them with the dates on my mom's supposed log. She highlighted row after row. 0 calls from her number after December 24th, 2010, she said. None to the house, none to Grandma's cell. If she left voicemails, they didn't go to any number we controlled. She flipped to another tab. These are my grandma's calendars, she said. She writes everything down: appointments, errands, visitors. There is no mention of Melissa coming over except the day she dropped me off. She added therapy notes, attendance records, even recordings of her own. I have been recording voices since I was 6, she said. If my mother had called and talked to me, those calls would be here. If she had visited, you'd hear her voice in my house, in my logs. She isn't there. She took a breath. My whole life is a data set, she said quietly. There are gaps. None of them are shaped like her. The room was so quiet I could hear the fluorescent lights humming. Judge Carlson turned to Melissa. Miss Harris, she said, do you have any response to this analysis? Any independent corroboration of your claims? Bank receipts? Original device logs? Melissa's face had gone chalky. The metadata could be wrong, she said. Her program could be wrong. Technology isn't. It's not perfect. I know I was there. I know I called. I gave everything to that lawyer. I just did what they told me. She shot a wild look at Daniel. He looked like someone had pulled the floor out from under him. Miss Harris, the judge said, voice frosty now. Did you, or did you not, fabricate or commission fabricated audio to present to this court as evidence? I just wanted my daughter back, Melissa whispered. That is not an answer, the judge snapped. Tears ran down Melissa's carefully made-up cheeks. I thought if you heard how much I tried, you'd believe me, she said. They told me it would just fill in the gaps, that it would sound like how it should have been. Gaps, should have been. The judge sat back. I've heard enough, she said. She looked at Chloe. Miss Harris, your work is impressive, she said. More than that, it's troubling in the best way. It shows us just how easily evidence can be manipulated and how important it is to listen beyond the surface. Then she turned to me. Mrs. Harris, for 11 years, you have provided Chloe with stability, care, and advocacy. You may not have had the paperwork, but the reality is clear. You have been her parent. Finally, she looked at Melissa. Miss Harris, you not only abandoned your child, you attempted to defraud this court with fabricated evidence, she said. That is unconscionable. Her gavel hit the block with a sharp crack. This court awards full legal and physical custody of Chloe Harris to Helen Harris, she said. Financial guardianship of Chloe's assets will remain with the current trust structure, with Miss Reynolds as co-trustee, until Chloe turns 18. Melissa Harris's petition is denied in full. She paused. Furthermore, she added, I am referring the matter of the falsified recordings to the county prosecutor for review of potential perjury and fraud charges. I didn't know. The murmuring started before she'd even finished the sentence. I sat there, hands numb, listening to the sound of my own heart beating. Chloe walked back to our table, closed her laptop, and slid it into her backpack. You knew, I whispered. She shrugged. I suspected, she said. I confirmed. When we stepped out of the courthouse into the cold March sunlight, the city sounded different, clearer, lighter. For the first time in months, I wasn't waiting for a shoe to drop. I looked at Chloe. You saved us, I said. She tilted her head. You saved yourself, she said. I just provided supporting documentation. Quote, Melissa ended up with 2 years of probation and 400 hours of community service in lieu of jail time. Her lawyer Daniel cut a deal with the prosecutor. She pled to attempted fraud and making false statements. No prison, but a record. I heard about it third hand. Miss Reynolds thought I should know in case Melissa tried anything else. For her community service, the judge assigned her to a domestic violence resource center on the east side. Fitting, Miss Reynolds said dryly. She'll spend 2 years listening to women whose "I'm fine" is hiding something. I didn't plan to see her. Cleveland is big enough, if you avoid certain zip codes. One afternoon 6 months later, I drove over to that very center to drop off a box of donated paperbacks from the library. Old thrillers, self-help, whatever people had left in the book drop. I wasn't thinking about Melissa. Not until I walked up the ramp and saw her through the open front door. She was sitting on the floor in a small circle of women, a toddler asleep against one side. A woman in a sweatshirt was talking, voice low and flat. "I told him I was okay with him keeping the car," the woman was saying, "but my hands were shaking so hard I couldn't get the key in the door." Melissa's hair was pulled back. She wore a plain t-shirt with the center's logo and no makeup. She looked older, smaller, more real. "Did you mean it?" Melissa asked her softly. The woman shook her head. "No," she said. "I just didn't want him to hit me again." I watched Melissa's face as she listened. For the first time, I saw something like understanding there. A staff member appeared to take the box from me. "Thanks so much, ma'am," she whispered. "Our volunteer in there? She comes in extra hours, says she's making up for lost time." I didn't say, "That's my daughter." I didn't say anything at all. I just watched for another heartbeat and then turned and walked back to my car. Some things don't need words. Because of the non-compete clause, Chloe couldn't sell another VoiceTell type system even if she wanted to. No commercial products that sniffed out emotional mismatch in voices for 5 years. So she did the next best thing. She started a company that tested everyone else's. "I'm going to break things for a living," she said over breakfast one morning, poking at her scrambled eggs. In a good way. She called it Echo Check. Hospitals sent their consent recording systems to her to see if they missed signs of coercion. Banks hired her to stress test their voice authentication algorithms against edge cases, people with stutters, people with accents, people who'd been crying. She hired people like her, young adults with anxiety diagnoses, kids who'd been called too sensitive or dramatic or weak because sound overwhelmed them. At the office, a renovated floor above a coffee shop, everyone wore headphones. No fluorescent lights, only lamps. No open-plan chaos, just small rooms with doors. Her first employee, Stephen, was a kid I vaguely remembered from the high school where I'd worked. He'd spent more time hiding in a corner of the library than in the cafeteria. He came up to me the first time I dropped off lunch. "Mrs. Harris," he said. "You probably don't remember me." "Of course I do." I lied automatically. "You told my English teacher I wasn't broken," he said. "Just wired differently. You told her to let me read during group work instead of forcing me to talk." "Oh," I said. "I do remember that." He glanced toward Chloe's office. "She says the same kind of stuff," he said. "About patterns. About using what we're good at instead of pretending to be someone else." His eyes were bright. "I never thought I'd have a job where that mattered," he said. I didn't trust myself to speak, so I just nodded. Chloe moved into a small apartment 15 minutes from my house when she was 17. "It's time," she said. "I can do my own groceries, and my own laundry, mostly." I helped her pick out a couch that didn't squeak when you sat on it, and a set of dishes from Target that didn't clang too loud. On Tuesday nights, I still brought dinner. Same thing every week. Roasted chicken, green beans, mashed potatoes. The way she liked it. Her old voice recorder sat on the counter next to the microwave, its buttons worn nearly white with use. One chilly November evening, I was rinsing plates in her tiny sink when she said, "Grandma." I shut off the water. She was at the table, fingers tapping lightly on the wood, eyes on her hands. "I know what you gave up," she said. I sat back down. "Oh?" I said, trying to sound light. "What's that?" "Friends," she said. "Trips. Quiet." I opened my mouth to protest. She held up a hand. "I heard your phone calls," she said. "When you told people you couldn't come to Chicago because I couldn't handle the train. When you turned down the library reunion because I was in crisis. When you told Aunt Linda you couldn't come stay with her after her surgery because the hospital sounds would make me melt down." I remembered all of those. I hadn't realized she'd been listening through bedroom doors, headphones off. "I know you didn't have to do that," she said. "You could have put me in a program, or let the state take me, or called Mom and told her to come get me." Her voice didn't shake. "You didn't," she said. "You chose me. Every day. Even when I had nothing nice to say back. Even when I just rocked and screamed and categorized your voice." I swallowed hard. "You're my granddaughter," I said. There was never a question. "There was," she said. "You just answered it the same way every time." She looked up at me then. Really looked. Her gaze met mine and stayed. "It mattered," she said quietly. "That was all. It mattered." I reached out, stopped just short of putting my hand over hers, and waited. She slid her fingers the last inch to touch mine. It was a small contact. Warm, real. You were worth it, I said. She nodded once. I know that now, she said. Later, driving home through the early winter dark, the radio on low, the wipers squeaking over the windshield, my phone buzzed in the cup holder. Voicemail. No one leaves voicemails anymore, I thought. Unless they're over 40, or they have something to say that's too big to text. I pressed play. Hey, Grandma, Chloe's voice said. No tremor. No mismatch. Just warmth threaded through the syllables. I just wanted to say thank you, she said. For staying. For listening when it was hard. For letting me hear the truth, even when it hurt. There was a small exhale. Okay, that's all, she said. You don't have to call back. I just wanted this one on record. The message ended. I laughed through my tears. Alone in my sedan on I-90, the Cleveland skyline, a jagged line of light in the distance. Of all the files, in all the systems, in all the servers in the world, that 30-second voicemail was the most truthful one I'd ever heard. So that's my story. I'm Helen. I'm 64. My daughter tried to rewrite history with fake audio. My granddaughter stopped her with the very thing that almost broke her. Her ears. If you were me, could you forgive your own child for walking away and then trying to lie her way back in? I don't know my answer yet, but I know this. When Chloe said thank you, and her voice matched her words perfectly, that was enough for me. For now,